slideshow. Let's see. That's better. Okay, so financial math, we're going to take a few things. First of all, just generalize. So these, like, not really homework problems, but just to get you thinking about what you do to manage your math. How do you control your finances? Because oftentimes, I don't know, I always thought if I just had more money, but maybe if I just managed the money I had better, I would have more money. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about today the power of compounding, how it helps with savings plans. So compound interest is when you get interest on top of your interest. Most plans are that way. And then 4D we talk about next week when we start talking about loans. Okay. So how do we take control of our finances? So just a few basic principles. Know what you have either in the bank or under your mattress, wherever you keep your money, know what's there, right? How much do you have? In our current system, I don't know, a lot of times we're paying things online, but kind of know what you have to pay, because once you send a thing to get something paid, if you don't have the money, then oftentimes there's additional bank fees. Know what you're spending, and a lot of times with all the plastic, I just go get some lunch and I swipe it every day, and all of a sudden now it won't work anymore because they say I've used up all my credit or I've used up all my money. So I had a friend who used to have envelopes, and he'd get his paycheck in cash. He'd put his cash into, that was his budget, into the envelope. When the envelope was empty, well, that was the end of that budget for that week or till the next payday. It worked for him, okay, but sometimes it's a hard, again, we don't necessarily have the cash. We're using plastic or something. The other thing is be careful about buying on impulse. Sometimes you just go shopping for something to do, and you see something you like, and I'll just get it, put it on the credit card or whatever. So impulse buying can be dangerous if you do it too much. It can also feel good if you had a bad day. Sometimes it feels good, just go buy something. But that's what can sort of get the finances controlling you in the other way. So that was the part, is to sort of budget out what you've got, don't overspend, and you'll have enough. For making a budget, what you need to do, you want to list all the money that's coming in. If you've got a job, how much am I going to make on a regular basis? Things like financial aid, you might get that at the beginning. There might be some money that's for tuition, but there's other parts to cover your living expenses. But again, you get a check maybe at the beginning, and that's supposed to last the whole semester. So break it down monthly, what kind of income that you have, list the expenses you have. You might have rent, you might have car payments, whatever it is, and then but recognize that you also may have something that has a big expense down the road. Maybe once a year there's a payment or something. Break that down as if it were a monthly payment. We subtract all the expenses from the income. This is what we call cash flow. If it's negative, what does that mean? What's negative cash flow? Income minus expenses. What's happening if we've got negative cash flow? We're spending too much. We're spending more than we have coming in. So we either got to get more money coming in, or we got to cut back on the expenses, something like that. Then make those adjustments. Okay. What we're getting here today is we're going to an education on how finances work, how savings work. So we're doing that. We're going to understand basic mathematics of loans. We'll do that next week. We don't talk directly about taxes, but that's something that you want to start considering, because that's an expense that comes off. But there's, with tax laws, there's certain ways you can get deductions and structure things. So, and one of the things is, like, if you're self-employed, there's an additional tax, but there's also ways that you can write off a lot of things. And so it almost pays for itself because you reduce your taxes that way. How the federal budget affects personal finances, again, we don't get directly into that, but as students, certain part of the federal budget deals directly with student aid, so there's that part. If you've got student loans, one of the federal budget things is a loan forgiveness of $10,000, so that's coming up here the next few months. So keep track of those things. But basically, we'll address the first two. In Canvas, I have a PDF copy of this book. This was given to me. I was in financial planning as an assistant. I did the inside type work. I worked for agents that did mutual funds, insurance, health insurance, life insurance, no auto insurance, and we did retirement plans. And mortgage loans. I guess I did that for about 5 years, and then I was in the financial planning for about 13. First day at work, my boss gave me this book. It's kind of a story approach to something, but it's about the richest man in Babylon. Basically, a guy who comes in with nothing, how he built up wealth, and then how he taught people in Babylon. So it's set in this 2,000-year-old desert kingdom, but the principles are there for us. So just one thing is like he talks about him and his friend are going to go and they saved up some money, they're going to invest. So they go, his friend knew a guy who had some emeralds, but then they go in the back street, they buy the emeralds, but neither of them knew about emeralds. They took the emeralds and guess what? They were just green glass. So he's just, the lesson there. So he's got all these different lessons. If you're going to invest, either you need to know what you're doing or you need to have someone you can trust that knows what you're doing, but just don't buy emeralds on the back street, right? So, but he comes up with some principles, and we'll go through those principles as well today. Okay, so we've got the simple interest calculator. We'll be using that, and again, we'll use this for any problem that says paying simple interest. Simple interest is you don't get interest on top of it. It's a one-time deal. So it does apply to some things, but again, all you need to know is if the problem says it's simple interest, use this calculator, not the other one. Otherwise, you won't get the right answer. If it's compound interest, don't use this one because you won't get the right answer. Okay. So next we get into the power of compounding interest. So we're going to, this is primarily the one we use. It's a type of calculator I used when I was in financial planning. And it's really pretty basic. You put in, again, all the details you've got, and then you solve on the thing that you're trying to solve for. So what we're going to do now is look at the formulas that are going to be calculating things, but not because we need to use the formulas. The formulas are embedded in the calculator, but that we need to understand what goes into financial math. So here it is. There are all these features. So there's a future value. So what we have is, thinking about savings, is we got money. Money has what we call a time value. Now if I take that money and I just stick it on this desk, is it going to get any? No, it's not going to get any value. It gets its time value if I put it to work. So if I give it to you because you need to borrow it for something, you want to buy a car, and then you pay me back with interest, that's how money works. Okay, that's where the time value comes in. So a couple things. There is a present value. It's what it's worth today. So it's, if I've got $5, I got $5. Future value is if you put it to work, what will it be worth in that future time? So there's those two time periods. Current value, future value, what it becomes. There's going to be an annual percentage rate. So we do percentage rates by the year. And we'll put that in, and that's how well your money is earning. Okay, you'll see banks are sometimes like less than 1%. Atrocious. Right now, inflation, which is the value of the money sort of decreasing, is right around 8%. Means prices are going up by about 8% a year. What does that mean with your money? If you've got it invested, you got to get at least 8% a year, or else you're actually losing money. Right? So we've got those ideas. So that's what that interest rate helps us get that judgment of. Now, there's gonna be a time thing in here, and what we'll see is that it's represented as N. They do number of compounding periods per year. So that's how often the interest gets paid to us. A lot of things is gonna be monthly, and especially when you go to loans, when you borrow, you make monthly payments. So a lot of things will be, N will be 12, okay, because there's 12 months in a year. If it was daily interest, there are systems where you get paid, it'll be 365, okay? And then finally, there's the number of years that we have that money invested, right? Or we make a contract or whatever. So what we'll see is that there's gonna be a combination. If I invest it for 3 years and I get paid monthly, that's gonna be 3 times 12. I'm gonna enter 36, right? These two get kind of combined. Now what I wanna look at is the mathematics of it is whatever present value I have, say to invest, I give it to the bank. What I get, this is kind of, remember from our interest, what does this 1 represent? It represents 100%, which means I'm getting back everything I put in, plus I'm getting some interest. Okay, and remember this was annual interest, so it gets divided by the number of, so if it was monthly, divided by 12, each month I'm getting 1/12 of the interest. Okay, so that's kind of in here. Again, we're not gonna actually have to work with this, but just to kind of understand. And then up in the exponent, what's this? Number of compounding periods times time, times year, so that's the component of time. So what I want to ask you is, let me see if I can write on this. I don't think let's go back, I can't. So I'll do it here, sorry, it won't be on the recording. But if I take 3 times 4, what do I get? If I take 3 raised to the 4th power, what do I get? 3 times 3 is 9, 27, 81. Good. What's more powerful, multiplication or exponents?
Exponents.
Exponents, same numbers, right? Exponential gets us 81 instead of 12. So there's a lot of power in an exponent, okay? Interest is important. The higher the interest rate we can get, the more money we'll get back, right? That's true. But also time. This is one of the lessons you'll learn is time is, when investing, time is king. It's the exponent. It's up here instead of down here. It's going to make things grow exponentially, which is, eventually it'll get big growth, okay? So the more time you allow yourself, you're gonna be better. Notice, the money you have, it just gets multiplied by the interest. So that's a multiplication effect. It's good, but it's time that is going to be in your exponent. So you want to remember that. And again, there's a combination. The bigger you get your base, these two are going to really control what you get. But that's kind of the story we're going to get by the time we're done is time value of money. The more time you have, the better things are going to work out. So just a couple things on compounding. So this is kind of like simple interest. You get 8% for the year. That's one-time payment. If you got that same interest, so in the calculation it's still 8%, but if they pay it 4 times, so quarterly, every 3 months they pay that interest, and then you start getting interest on your interest, it's like getting 8.24%. If you do it monthly, it's almost like 8.3%. So notice the money, the more often you get compounding, the higher the interest. But then there's sort of a limit. You could, what this is 1 billion times a year. I don't know how, still 8.32. So there's a limit to the effect of compounding. And they have something they call continuous compounding, but it does, it's better than 8%. But what you'll see is as long as you get monthly compounding, that's, it doesn't get too much better than that. You add a little bit more with more compounding, but get some compounding is better than none. But once we get past about monthly, it doesn't matter too much. Unless you got $1 billion, a little bit of extra interest could mean, you know, several million, so it's not, you know, it does make a difference, but that's the power of compounding. So try to look for things where you're getting, some credit unions still do quarterly compounding, so they're down here. And notice by going to monthly compounding, you're picking up a considerable amount. So look for that. So now we'll talk directly about savings plans and investments. So when we talk about savings plans, we looked at the first one is the present value, just sort of having a chunk of money to invest. But what also happens to many of us is we don't have a chunk of money, but we might get paid monthly and we could save monthly, right? We could put $100 away or something. So what does the math of that look like? It's very similar. So this would be a payment that we could make, maybe $100 a month to a savings plan. What we basically see, the formula gets a little bit more complicated, but what's still up in the exponent? Time. So the more time, the better. There's this interest rate thing. And again, what we have is we're going to, you know, we look for a future value. This particular formula has no present value because we don't have anything. We're just going to put away regular payment each month, $100, $1,000, whatever we have. And then all the other details are still there. We always have to have all the money or all the numbers filled in. Again, what we usually have is either future value, that's what we want to calculate. If I save this amount, what will I have in that future? Or we put in, I want to have this much saved for retirement, what do I need to put in each month? So we could do either, so you'll see problems that'll do both ways. You could have problems where you do have a present value and you also make payments, okay? So notice they're really two separate calculations. When we do it with the calculator, or the online thing, we don't have to break it down like that. We put in what we do for these and we'll solve, but mathematically they really are, you've got what you've already got deposited, it's getting money, this is what the new stuff's getting money, you add it together, and that's how we do it. But notice the factors that are involved, a future value, a present value, payment, none of those change. Those are going to be a part of every question we have. Sometimes, again, like that last one, the present value was 0. So they don't announce it with a bugle or anything. We have to know, oh, I got to put a 0 in there. We're going to see when we have loans next week, future value will be 0 because we're going to pay it off. And but again, the problems don't tell us put in 0 for future value. We're going to need to know that. So, and we'll get through some of these examples. Finally, this is a good one to write down because they will be asking, there's a few problems we'll do what we call total return. So it's really getting at what is the interest rate that we've earned on an investment from beginning to end. Notice this does not have any time value in it, right? It's just, I bought it for this amount, I sold it for this amount, and this will give us a calculated way of how much interest did I make. We'll look at a few examples. It gives us a ballpark, and again, it's not really, we're going to look at, there's an annual return, which is going to be more something that we want to look at. Okay, so here's a question. Suppose you decided to invest in some real estate property, 2004. The amount of the original investment was $27,500, so you bought a little plot of land. 2013, you sell it, you receive $43,400 for the property. What's your total return? So how do we do that one? Right. It's going to be our future value minus our present value. Notice this is going to be positive if we made money. It'd be negative if we lost money. And then what we always do, it's the interest is based off of the present, what we put in there. And so we're going to have 43,400 minus 27,500, all divided by 27,500. That will give us our total return. And we'll move that out. So 43,000 minus 27,000 divided by that, and it gives you actually 0.57. think, let's see, wait. Now that would be, yeah, I think it does give you 0.578, multiply by 100, move the decimal over 2 to turn it to an interest rate. Okay. We could do this with the proportions that we did earlier, thinking of interest rate, right? Percent over 100 equals, so it was similar, but what we're calculating here is the gain over the investment. So we got a little bit of a calculation, but we can follow through with those. But again, this, I would get the same 57% whether it happened in 1 year or this is 9 years. So there's no time comparison here. Is 50, does 57.8% sound like a good return? Sure it does. But what was it actually on an annual basis so I could compare it to another investment? Well, to do that, there's another formula. This is the one that's actually of more interest. It's a little more complicated, but this is the one we really want to do. So it's just taking the future value divided by the present value, and notice it has the time in here, however many years it is. It's 1 over the number of years, and then we minus the 1. This is subtracting off basically the 100% that we got. So it's getting the gain, the percent above 100, and that will give us the calculation of annual return. And again, there's a few problems they'll ask you to do that, so you'll want that formula. And again, the same problem, but watch, we'll see how that calculation works out differently. So it's 43,400 divided by the 27,500, 1/9 power minus 1. Notice it ends up being a 5.2% on an annual basis. Still not bad. Real estate, that's probably good. 4 to 5% is about average that happens with real estate, but it doesn't sound as exciting as 57%. But this is more accurate because it brings in the value of time. So you could now compare this with maybe another type of investment. If you had something you could get 10% a year, hey, I would do that. That's double the interest, right? Okay. We doing good so far? Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about types of investments, and again, this isn't stuff for the homework. This is more for your personal knowledge. When you go to invest money, there's multiple ways to do it. One way is with stocks. Now, some people call this gambling on the stock market, but what you're doing is you're investing in a company. Now, some people do it as gambling. There's day traders that are kind of trying to buy and sell and watch the market go up and down, and maybe that's more like gambling because you're trying to time it. If you do it as an investment, you look for good companies that are going to grow, and you invest in them, and you put it in there for time. What happens with the stock market is if you have time, then you will see better returns. The stock market they did this with a rolling 20-year period, so every 20 years from beginning to end, if you invested here and you took your money out 20 years later, on average, you get about a 10 to 12% return on your money. Now, there are short periods of the market where if you put your money in here and you took it out here, maybe 4 years later, you might have lost a lot of money because you'll see markets go up and down. Like right now, if you have money in the market, you've probably got less today than you did last year because that's what the market's been doing. If you pull your money out, you will make that a real loss. If you just let it sit, say, okay, it'll come back after recovery and stuff, maybe in a couple of years, you'll be back to where you started, and then maybe you go back into growth, you'll be up 10 to 12%. Okay, so stocks have, you're actually owning companies. You own enough, you actually control it. That's what Elon Musk was trying to do with Twitter. He was going to buy the whole thing out. He was going to buy enough shares where he could control the thing. Now he doesn't want to do that, but that's a totally different ballpark than most of us. Most of us don't have $44 billion in our pocket to go buy Twitter, but same type of thing is you buy enough, you actually control. And even with one share, I remember I used to work for a trucking company, Consolidated Freightways. I worked in the computer lab. I worked enough, they paid me 1 share of stock. And then next year, they asked me to vote on something. I go, I get a vote, I get my. So when you buy stock, you actually own part of the company, and usually it's 1 share gets 1 vote. So if you own 10,000 shares, you get 10,000 votes. You get more control that way. Okay, so that's stocks. And again, if you give it time, you bring down the risk factor. If you're looking for short time, it's got greater risk that way. You can make a lot of money. There have been people that did that. When I was in financial planning, we had the guy, we called him the $3 million man, because he went from nothing to about $3 million in a short period of time by doing the day trading. He was buying and selling. He was buying the right stuff. He had all these tips. People were following his tips. My boss was following his tips. He had this tip about the Brazilian phone system. And there was a company to buy down there because they were going to get this contract. And so I think it was at that 20,000, this was like 30 years ago. Put in 20,000 of his retirement money, and it did go up for a little bit, but then it started coming down because I guess that tip wasn't quite right. They didn't get the contract. I think it got down to where his 20,000 was worth like 2,000 because it had gone way down. But he had other money set aside, and I talked to him. He's got condos in Hawaii now, and he owns several buildings, and he recovered fine. But he was smart enough to not put all of his eggs over there. But and the $3 million man, the next year he was about a $30,000 man. So it's when you're trying to market time, yes, you can get some really good gains, but you got to be careful. It's hard to keep doing that. It's just like, gamblers, you might go on a lucky streak where you're picking the right teams and you're doing the right bets and money's coming in, but all of a sudden, next weekend, you're not picking the right teams, and those wins could become losses pretty quick, okay? So stocks, you got to know what you're doing, okay? Or get an advisor who is got a good track record, follow them. But again, be careful about it. It takes some knowledge. Another type of investment is a bond. Now, when you do a bond, you are actually lending money to a company. So you do not own the company. Typically, they have some kind of a dividend that they pay. Usually it's based on an interest rate. And the cool part about owning a bond is if the company ever goes bankrupt, you're the first one to get paid, not the stockholders. So you have first right to get your money out of it. So that's why a lot of people will go with bonds. Typically, the returns will be a little bit lower than stocks because, again, if the company does really well, stocks can go way up. Where bond, you've already made your agreement. Doesn't matter how good the company does, you're getting your interest rate, okay? Now, a little bit, if the company does really well, hey, people will say that's a good investment. You might make some off the bond. But bonds is you're actually loaning your money. It's a lending type arrangement, with the company promising to pay, or the government. There's municipal bonds where that's how the governments get their money. Maricopa Community Colleges, that's how we fund this. They put out a bond. People buy them, they get interest back. So that's how that works. And then finally, this is like your bank savings accounts. This is what we call cash. They give you the lowest amount of interest rate generally, but they're also the most secure. You put it in a bank generally, you're going to be able to get going. Your money's going to be there the next day. It's not going to go up and down, but it'll just grow a little bit because it'll generally have lower interest. And again, the idea is to have some kind of a mix of investments. And part of it is how much do you want to personally invest of your time in getting educated. So if you're going to go into stocks, probably will need to do some research or have some background in that. But here are the considerations. So liquidity, how easily can you get your money out? Investing in real estate is oftentimes pays some good dividends, but you can't always buy today, sell tomorrow. Sometimes it takes 6 months to sell. Sometimes it might take 2 years. And you might have to get in this. So liquidity is how fast can you get your cash out. So you need some liquidity, but some things, yeah, leave it invested for a longer period. Risk. What is the likelihood that you're going to get your money back? And again, going in the back alley and buying some emeralds from some guy that you don't really know and you don't know nothing about emeralds, you might lose all your money. The more knowledge you have, the better you can know how to manage those risks. Okay. And again, if you do the research and you say, okay, this company, are they, you know, that's how a lot of people, when they buy stocks, they look for good value. This company is undervalued because they could say it's got this, this, and this, it's got management, but they're going to be taken off. That's when they want to buy it. Company performs well, they could, you know, stocks go up. But again, there's also rumors that go out, there's all sorts of things. And then finally, it's the return. And again, one of the things we're looking at, especially in this environment, last year when I was teaching this, average inflation rate, we were around 2%. So inflation wasn't really a big deal to talk about, but a little bit. But this year we're talking about inflation being 8%. That's a huge chunk. That means you got to get, your money's got to be earning at least 8% to keep its earning potential. You got to be getting an 8% raise just to stay even. You know, it used to be 8% raise was a good deal. Hey, I'm getting ahead in life. Now you need an 8% raise just to stay at the same level of buying power that you have, you know, from last year. So inflation's a little bit bigger, so we got to make sure our returns are there. And again, I talked about stocks over time having maybe a 10 to 12% return. That's looking a lot better. Bonds sometimes are 5 or 6%. And again, if our return's not enough, we're actually, while we're getting that 5% and it's secure, we're actually losing 3% buying power, right? Or like when I was in high school, we had double-digit inflation. It was like 12%, and it was just, you know. So we got to watch those. So those are the considerations. Let's see, what do I have next? I wish I could. I'll see. Okay, yeah. So. And here's the stock market. Again, this is, you know, this was the crash in the 1921s, the Black Friday type thing, which, you know, it was really bad at that time. But if we look at modern time, look at this, this was in the early 2000s. There was another, like 1997 was a really hard year in Asia. They had the Asian market meltdown. But, you know, you could have times where it's, hey, it's going way up, but you know, if you don't time it right, here it's down, it went back. 2007, 2008, actually, if we looked at this, there was another big drop. So again, with your investing, you've got to know who you are, what your feelings are, if you're going to be able to stay invested. And again, there's some that you're going to want, you know, if you need this money to live off of, you've got to have it more liquid and less at risk. If you're saving for a future, you've got to be, you know, educate yourself enough so that you can take appropriate risk and get some return. And we're going to talk about that next, of the part of getting some kind of return. So let me talk a little bit about, before we talk about savings, we got to talk about where does the savings come from, right? So whatever our income is, however we've got it coming, so we got 100% of whatever money we have each month, say. Okay. From that 100% of our hard-earned money, or maybe somebody's giving us a gift, we got a sugar daddy or sugar mama giving us something, you know, I'm always looking for that, right? We got some money coming in. What do we have to do with that money? You guys like to eat? I do.
Spend it.
We got to spend it somehow, but yeah, you like to live inside? You know, yeah, we could live under a bridge, but Arizona gets pretty hot, so we got to have some place to live. Again, maybe sugar daddy, sugar mama's providing the place, but there's going to be housing, right? And we could just maybe generally living expenses. Okay. So what percentage of this do you think should go towards housing and living expenses?
Say 70 or 80.
Excellent. You must have read the book. The book says it's 70%. So whatever you're making, you need to live within that 70%. And it's kind of cool, the book doesn't say try to live off of 50 and put, it says no, live, if that's what you're making, whatever you got, enjoy, spend your money, enjoy it, because, who knows how much in the future we got. So you gotta have enjoyment out of life. So it recommends about 70% for our food, our housing, those daily expenses that we have. So that leaves us 30%. What should we do with that 30%?
Whatever you want.
Well, we might have some debts, right? Because maybe to do this, we need a car to get to work. So we have to borrow some money for that. We might need to borrow some money for the house. Anyway, what the suggestion is whatever debt we have, and again, if we don't have debt, it's best if you don't accumulate it. But the recommendation is put 20% to paying off that debt. So manage it so that you're able to keep it in there. And again, if you don't have the debt, then that should go into savings. Okay, live off of the 70%. This other 30% is going to go either to paying debt, and then the suggestion would be 10% into savings and what we'll call long-term savings. Not just so that you can go buy something next month, but savings for later on. What we're going to see is if you follow this formula, this 10% savings over about 25 to 30 years at appropriate interest rates will replace this 70%. So this will save up enough so that your money is working to replace your income. So you now don't need to work, you don't need the sugar daddy or sugar mama anymore, you're your own sugar daddy or sugar mama. Your money is working as hard as you work to get here. So we're gonna see just that 10%. Now, it's better if you can get some of this debt paid off and maybe make this 10% 15 or 20, 30. The other one is a lot of plans when you're working, they have something called a 401k or a retirement plan. A lot of times employers will kick in money over the issue. I put in 7%, they put in 7%. That's free money. I'm putting away 14%. I'm only having to put 7% of my own money. Employers matching that. Okay. Here at Scottsdale, they have a different plan. They require the faculty or employees to put in, I think it's 11 or 12%, but then the district matches that. So that goes in a fund, and they have to put away more, but the match is more. So, look for what your employer is willing to do that can help with this. Okay, but what I want to show you then is just kind of a run through. We won't do the calculations, but I've got an Excel spreadsheet that will run these calculations. I've got two of my prior students who were willing to sign a release and let you hear their personal story about what they did after they took this class. And I've been teaching a long time, so I've got a little history here. So we're going to see my two favorite students. One listened to me, one didn't, but that's okay. So I think I got their picture as the next slide. Here they are, Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Tied together at the hip. They got a job in the same company, sitting right next to each other, same job, same pay. One of them decided, I'm going to start saving right away. The other said, I just got out of school. I'm going to have some fun with my money. I'll save later. Okay, so here's their savings ledger. So Tweedledee says, okay, I'm making $40,000 a year now. Little Crow says I should put 10% away. So I'm putting $4,000 a year of my salary. And they'll really see it because he has payroll deduction that comes out of the paycheck, goes into the buy stocks or whatever. And I think it's about an 8% that I figured on here. I don't have all the details anymore. But by the end of the year, he's got his interest, right? So what happens is over the first 10 years, he's put away, notice he's putting away some of his money. He's getting a raise, I think it's like 3 or 4% annual raise. So then, since he has his employer taking 10% out, what he puts away keeps growing a little bit. And in 10 years, he's got $66,000. Tweedledum says, I'll get around to it later. And actually, this was me when I got out of school. That's what I thought. I'll get to that savings next year. And next year becomes next year. And 10 years down the road, you got nothing. So here's what they decided to play a little game. Tweedledum says, hey, Tweedledee, I bet you if you stop savings, 10 years I'll catch up to you. Do you think it'll happen? Leave his money here, but don't put any more away. Tweedledum, now that they've got higher salary, he's going to be putting more away for the next 10 years. Do you think they'll get close to catching? What do you think? Don't think so. Okay, so let's look at the next 10 years. Tweedledee doesn't put anything else away, but notice what he has put away is gaining interest. Tweedledum starts saving, and again at a higher rate because he's got a higher salary, still the 10%, but notice Tweedledee still has twice as much saved as Tweedledum. Tweedledum waited, that 10 years, that initial 10 years is so important. So important to start today, even if you only got 2 pennies to put in the jar. But savings is something you want to think about and do now, not just think about it, because like I said, I did that. I thought about it. And I was in financial planning, right? And I'm telling other people, save their money. But then I was going, oh, it's a lot more fun to spend it, right? But this is kind of fun, because, there's a lot more security here. Well, what do you think if they go for another 10 years? Do you think he'll be able to catch him up after 10 years? Surely, putting in for 20 years, he only put in for 10. What do you think? Maybe close. So that was 11 to 20 years. Here's 21 to 30 years, another 10 years. Getting there, right? Starting to catch, but even after putting in for 20 years, putting in that first 10 years and just letting that money grow, 309, almost $50,000, more than $50,000 difference, just because he started 10 years early. And he put in a lot less at the beginning. So then the moral of the story, through their work lives, they work till 67, because that's when you get your full Social Security. Finally, after what? That's like 30 years, more than 30 years of putting in, it's got $10,000 more. Okay, so the results were Tweedledee put in $74,000 because he did it in the first 10 years, ended up with $841. Tweedledum, this annual salary. So the total amount, $42,000 was what he put in over that 10 years. Got $841,000 at 67. Tweedledum, because he waited that first 10 years, put in over almost $200,000 to get basically the same thing, get a little $10,000 more. So that first 10 years is so valuable. But here's the real deal: is do you think Tweedledee really would have stopped saving? Why would? It's money he never missed because it was coming out directly. So I ran the spreadsheet again with them both putting in all the way through, and Tweedledee's from day one to there is 1.6 million, right? Compared to 851. Double it by just starting with that first 10 years. So and I've had students that are real students, not Tweedledee and Tweedledum. They really weren't my students, but got your attention, right? But I've had students that go in here and they say, it was weird. Right after you gave that presentation, the next day at work, they did this 401k thing. And before I probably was thinking, I wouldn't know whether to sign. I said, I just signed up, put some money away because they had a match. That's free money. Do it. Even if they don't have a match, do it, because what they do is it's pre-tax dollars. So if you put 100 away, you would have only got maybe 70 of it anyway, because you would have had to pay taxes on it, so that you don't pay taxes in the beginning. So putting 100 away is easier. And then if your employer does a match, even better on top of it. But what you got to do is get it set up, get used to it, And see, this is control, this is money, 1.6 million instead of the 85. And this is, at least Tweedledum did start saving, right? But had he just started from day one, he'd have twice as much money. So it's always hard to play catch up. And again, I've been through different career changes and such, and oftentimes I would cash in that retirement and spend it, get a new start. That's great. But if I went, and I don't go back and see what I would have had if I didn't do that, because I don't want to cry that hard. But, you know, hey, the other part of it is what you're doing right now and going to school to find training, education, so that you can do what you love to do. I don't mind that I'm going to be working till I'm 80 because I love what I do. Finally, financial planning, I didn't really like it. It was stressful. You're dealing with other people's money. When the market goes down, they called you and they blamed you. And I'd have to take all that, yeah. It was great when the money was going up and they said, oh, you're so great, you know, we put us in this investment. It wasn't me, it was the investment, right? When it went down, it wasn't me, it was the investment. But, you know, you got it both ways. So it was a job, though, that wasn't really me, but I did it for a while. I like what I do. And that's one of the key parts of all of this is get to be doing what you like to do. And then everything else will take care of it. But then on top of that, get what you like to do. Live a good life with what you're making, you know. But if you want to, you know, get that bigger house, get this bumped up somehow. You can go back, get the master's degree and get into this and higher salary, then you can make that. But keep the savings, you know, 10% or a little bit better is even, you know, move it from 10 to 15. Not take on so much debt, keep it at 30%. All this stuff will work. The money will get there. Get rich slowly, you know, and again, do it with a mix of investments. Some stocks, some bonds, maybe some cash if you need to get it out. But get the education for that. And a lot of that is not about taking a class, but it's about reading and watching, you know, financial planning shows, watching the right guys, those kind of things. Okay, and that's the lecture for today, but what are we doing now? We're going to do our quiz so that we can see how to actually apply all of this. Let's see what happened. Okay, so I got those things open still. I got to get back into Canvas. Now it's still recording. Now the thing is, when I pull up my question, it'll have probably different numbers than yours, but you should be able to follow along, because basically what we're going to do is we're going to take those numbers, put them into the calculators, and see how the calculator can actually do all the work for us. Okay, time. We're good time still. Okay. So financial math. We're going to go into the homework quiz. And should I do, you can take it as 10 times, well, let's go for the teacher preview, because then it'll give us, like, we can check our answers. So question 1, Monica invests $17,000 at 7%. What kind of interest? Simple interest. So we're going to need the simple calculator. Now the other thing with these calculators, if you've got them like in tabs, you can kind of, what I like to do is I resize these windows. All I really need to use is this little part. I think one of them even has a pop out. The other thing is when we get to the other one, they've actually got there's a phone app, and so I have it on my phone, and it looks the same, but you have your little phone. And what I like about that is, you know, these days you have to go everywhere with your phone, like, you know, dual. I can't get into my school apps and stuff without having, you know, the second phone, so it's always with me. I got a financial calculator with me. I got all this stuff. It's great. Okay, so what I can do is I can just set it here. Since it's simple interest, She's investing 17%. So the key part we want to do is, what do we want? Okay, let's read interest for 45 years. How much interest is earned over the 45-year period? So we want to solve for the interest earned. Now notice what the kind of things you can solve for here. Total P plus I, principal and interest. You can solve for the principal, you can solve for the rate or the time period. So actually we're going to have to solve for the total P and I, which is, it'll give us the total we end up with. To get the amount of interest, how do we get that? We subtract what we started with. Okay, so we'll use this first one. The principal, that's what got invested, which in my case is $17,000. Your question might be different. Enter it in. We have an interest rate, and it just says percentage. We say 7%, so I just have to put 7. And they do it for 45 years, so there's this years here. I put in 45. You could change it to months, whatever it is, but it says 45 years. And then I'm going to calculate. Oh, actually, I should make it a little bit bigger because I just noticed down here it has the calculation. And what's cool is the total amount. So if they put it, she puts in 17,000 for 45 years at 7%. She will have 70,000. The question's asking how much interest. They actually calculated for us here, right? Interest is accumulated minus the principal. So minus 53,550. I didn't realize they did that because I do the calculation on my own, right? Because you take this minus that. And then what's kind of cool here is they explain formulas. These apps are kind of nice because if you want to be able to do them by hand, they will explain how they're doing it. But if you're like me and kind of lazy, I just want to get the answer. It gives you the answers too. And again, it gets me to focus on, the questions. 17% simple interest over 45 years has earned $53,500. And I'll show you one thing. Let's see, where did it go? I'll bring this in a little bit. There it is. What's kind of cool with this is some of these you can actually copy and paste. See if that works. Control C to copy, Control V to paste it. I don't know if with that comma it might, sometimes you have to take the commas out. But yeah, 53,550. How much is the account at the end of 45 years? Well, that's the accumulated value, so that's the interest plus what she put in there. And again, they give us that to 70,550. So I can put that in. Okay, and again with mine, I can check the answer there. You would click here and yeah, we got them all right. Okay, so you're going to be asked to do ones with simple interest. Is anyone pulling these up? Are you getting the same numbers or slightly different numbers? Yeah, we probably all have different numbers, which is sort of good because then that forces you to kind of have to go through it. But notice how we can do everything. We're just going to come to these calculators. Okay, we will learn how to do it as we go. Javier wants to invest $5,800 in a savings account. Determine the interest rate, simple interest. Boom, we're using the simple interest calculator, not the other one yet. Okay, required for Javier's investment to double in value in 14 years. Round your answers to the nearest tenth. So the question is he's going to invest $5,800. We want to know the interest rate required for it to double. So notice on this simple interest calculator, we can solve for the rate. And once we do that, the questions change. It wants to know what's the total P and I, what's the accumulated value we want in the future. What's the principal? Well, I know the principal, it gave it to us, right? 5,800. We know the number of years, 14 in my case, but what would be the total accumulated value that he wants? He wants to double the 5,800, so another calculator, 5,800 times 2, 10,000, 11,600. So sometimes you have to have a other calculator too. But we can do that, and then we just calculate. And then again, down here, it provides all the formulas if you want to see how the calculation was done. But it gives us the interest rate. It needs to get 7.1429. And it says round your interest in there is 1/10%. How many decimal places is a 1/10? One place. So we're going to put in 7.1. 7.1%. 7.1. Or again, whatever you came up with. Okay, see, technology is great. It will be able to do these calculations. The formulas aren't so bad for simple interest, but let's, again, let's focus on that. Let's see, how many? Yeah, we've only got 5, so we'll be done with this soon. So this is a good one. We're starting to transition. So if $2,400 is invested in an account for 10 years, find the value of the investment at the end of 10 years if the interest is compounded annually, compounded semi-annually, quarterly, monthly, daily. So now this is compounding. Can we use a simple interest calculator? No, because it's compounded. So what I'm going to do is minimize this, pull up my financial calculator. I'm going to pull the tab over here, shrink it down a little bit. And the other cool thing about this, if you search either in the Android store or the Apple store, they're both the same, just financial calculators. Shoot. We'll come back. I don't know why this, you guys have this happen sometimes too, right? You're just kind of, it drops you out. I saw someone, it's frustrating, but hey, and I didn't check that answer, but that's okay. Well, what? It might have 7.1. Sometimes they didn't change it on you. But yeah, okay, we're good there. Okay, so, and now they change it to $2,400 for 10 years. So what we're going to do here is we come to this calculator. But anyway, I was saying if you go to the App Store, you can download the phone version of this. Just like this one, there's actually also like 50 different calculators in there. It'll do unit conversions like we did in one. So it's got a lot of different things it'll do as well. Okay, so remember, and this kind of mixed up, we've got the present value, that's what we got right now. We've got the number of payments, which in this case, they aren't making payments, they're just investing the money, so we're going to put 0 there. This is going to be the future value. That's what we're going to calculate on, is what will we have in the future. They're going to give us the interest rate. We're going to see how each time that the compounding changes, the periods have to change too. Okay, so all of this is for 10 years, but watch how we do. So once we do these calculations, you'll pretty much be set. So we put in the present value, 2,400 or whatever they're saying that you put in. They're not making any payments, so we have to put in 0 there. Sometimes it'll just ignore that, but it's always good practice to put that in. Future value, that's what we want to find out, find the value in 10 years, right? We want to find that, so we're going to click on future value once we have everything else put in. They give us the interest rate is 5%, compounded annually, so they've got this compounding here, annually. And the number of periods, so if we compound once a year for 10 years, what do we put there? 10, 1 times 10. So, and so that you'll see that that's always a multiplication we have to do. Right, twice a year, then it's 2 times 10 is going to be 20. Monthly is going to be 12 times 10. So yeah, that's the part that we're always going to do. And then once we got them in, we just say, what's our future value? There it is. Now, there's a negative on that, and this is the way I wanted to address it. Where does that negative come from? Money has...
That's money you're spending, right?
There you go. Money has a direction. So what I would say is, when I think of this, is from my perspective, it would be negative whenever the money leaves my hand. When did the money actually leave my hand? When I invested it. And so if you make a negative 2,400, you'll see that the returned money is positive. But it doesn't really matter, at least in this situation, because it's going to be the same amount We just say it's money that's going in the opposite direction. But just for there will be times when we're doing loans, especially, where you've got to make sure you put in the right amount or the right negative. So the 2,400 is actually going to be going away from me. And now watch when I do the future value, the number will be the same, but now it's positive. So it's just a little cleaner that way, but it's up to you. You could do either way. You'll get the right values. Just remember that minus is telling you the money is going in an opposite direction. So I like to think I put 2,400, I invest it, 10 years later they give it back to me, but they give me more money, 3,909. So we can put that in here.
So it's not going to be negative.
No, so we won't put any negative money in here. It is positive. It's just changing direction.
Okay.
Now, some investments, we have to be careful how we do it, because it could be that it is negative. It means we lost money. So keep that in mind. If you always think, from my perspective, which way is this money going, or from the person's perspective, is it going away from them or coming back to them? So compounded semi-annually, the cool thing is we can leave most of it as it is, but what do we change? Compounding to go semi-annually, and then period's got to be 20, so it's got to be 10 years times 2. You got to do both. Otherwise, if you don't, you won't see much change. And then we click on this, we got 30 extra bucks, right? So that extra compounding is paying off. It's now 3922.68. Okay, compounded quarterly. Quarterly is how many times a year? 4. So then I've got to put in 10 times 4, so that's 40. And then I calculate on the future value. I just click on that button. It will recalculate it. So now I'm up to 3,944. So you see, the more often that we have compounding, the greater growth we get. The next one's compounded monthly. So instead of quarterly, monthly. And you'll see this is probably about as good as it gets. 12 times 10 is going to be 120 times we've got our interest. Calculate on the future value, we've got 3,952. 3,952.82. And I'll show you when we go to daily, it's not going to make that much of a difference. So we've been getting better and better, more and more money, the more often we compound. But when we go to daily, I think we can do daily. Yeah. So 365 times 10, how many periods? That's 3,650. And now when I calculate, it's 50. I got like an extra $3 or something, 356 or $4 maybe, $3,956.80. So you see, if you can get monthly compounding, that's great. You don't have to worry about getting more than that. It's not going to make a huge difference unless you're the billionaire, and then it's an extra $1 million. But if you got a billionaire, probably $1 million doesn't mean much. That's your spending change or something. Yeah. So you leave a tip for $1 million, I wish, right? Okay, so let me check our answers. Hopefully it's all, oops, there was something it didn't like. It didn't like my compounded monthly. Let's see, what did I do? And it didn't like my compounded semi-annually. I'm going to take a guess that it has something to do with rounding. It wants it rounded to the nearest cent. Oh no, these are rounded to the nearest cent. I'm going to try by just rounding them up. I think that might be what happened, because the calculator was right. Let's see if it counts them as right. Nope, it didn't like them any.
Maybe you even said near cent meant
Let's go.
change the 6 to like the 7 and the 8 to the 9.
Let's go back semi-annually. That should be 20. Oh, no, end of time, so everything should be 3,932.68. 3,900. Oh, 32, okay. So just, I put in 22, and I guess I just didn't read it. I don't know if it'll let it, because it's a quiz, it gives you 2 times. So I blew it. I didn't, so be careful as you're entering in. I just a typo. Probably same thing with the monthly, right? I probably wrote down a number wrong. $3,952.82. Well, that's correct. That's what I did have. But anyway, if you get problems like that, the calculator, as long as, again, make sure you're reading it correctly, but it's going to give you the accurate values. And it's rounding it to the nearest cent. So I'm not sure what happened. Did it work out for your guys's? Okay. You were more careful than I was. So we got 2 more. We'll finish these up, and then we'll have our quiz done, homework. And then what you're going to see is we actually use these same tools next week for loans, because the math is really the same. It's just that the money's going to, we're borrowing and paying back rather than the other way around. So how much would you need to deposit in an account in order to have $2,000 in the account in 5 years? Assume the account earns 4% interest. Is it simple interest? No, it says compounded quarterly. So we're in the right place. Round your answer. So for this one, what do we have? We want to have a future value of $2,000. And this is where it's kind of think we want $2,000 to come back to us. So when we calculate on the present value, it should be negative. I'm just going to clear it out. 5 years. So we know the time period. We know it's going to earn 4%. So we can put our interest rate at 4%. Compounded quarterly, so we need to change that to quarterly. If we're doing 5 years quarterly, how many times 20? 5 times 4. Got everything. We're not making payments. We're going to make a lump sum deposit. So how much do we need to deposit so it will grow to 2,000? We just click on present value. And again, it's negative, but that's because that's what has to come out of our pocket. $1,639.09. Oops. $1,639.09. Actually, let me come back up here. What I could, 3952.82. That's what I thought I had in there. Yeah, that was okay. So I can do that. Before I put it in. 1639.09. So yeah, it works out. So you see, we can, given this much to invest, this is what we're going to have. If we need this much, how much do we need to invest? And then this last one is kind of what I told you we're going to need to calculate. What is the total return? Yes.
For number 4.
How
did you get 20 for like?
Oh, the calculator.
Where did you get
The 20 comes from, because it's quarterly, so that's 4 times a year, and then it's 5 years. So 5 years times 4 will give us the number of times that it compounds. So yeah, that in the periods is always going to be that calculation. Okay, so it's kind of a side calculation.
Then for finding interest, to put it like on the simple interest calculator, it's just finding P, right? Or is that just total?
Usually it's P plus I, but it will give you both. It'll give you the total accumulated value, and then it subtracts it off and gives you your interest. Okay. A bank features a savings account that has an annual percentage rate of 4.2% with interest compounded monthly. Caitlin deposits $11,000 into the account. How much money will Caitlin have in the account in 1 year? Well, we can do that since it's got compounded interest, right? Compounded monthly. We can do that calculation with this one. So she's going to deposit $11,000. And again, I would look at that as minus $11,000 because she's got to let go of the money. 4.2%. So the rate, and that's what I like about these is when you do the math, you would actually turn it to a decimal. We don't have to, we just leave it as 4.2 for the calculator. Compounded monthly, so we go to monthly. And we're doing it for 1 year, so what is the periods? 12 times 1, so there's, yeah, good. And what do they want to know? We're not making any payment. How much money will she have in the future? So I do future value. It will become $11,471. And 0 cents. Let's see that. I'll check it. Yeah. What is the annual percentage yield for the savings account? Now, the answer is not 4.2. But remember what the APY, we had a formula for that. So what we need is we need future value divided by present value raised to the 1 over y minus 1. So there's one way to do it, but I'm going to also show you a tricky way to do it with this calculator. Okay, what is APY? Annual percentage yield. It's the amount of interest rate you would need to make the same amount in 1 year without compounding. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this, we're going to make it annual, which would mean that you just get paid your interest at the end. We're going to leave these values in here. We're going to solve on the rate, and that's what's going to give it to us. So that's what's called the lazy man's way of doing it. I don't even have to go to this formula. So since I've got all this in here, I'm going to change this to annual. So we get, 1 time. What else do I need to change? I need to change my periods to 1. So 1 year, we're getting the same return. What I want to do is I want to calculate what kind of interest rate would I need to happen on an annual basis to get the same amount that happened on a monthly basis. Watch, the interest rate's going to change. Is it going to go up or down? It's going to go up because we're needing a higher interest rate to make it happen because we're not getting the compounding. And it says round it to the nearest hundredth because it's 4.28 instead of, what was it? It was 4.1, wasn't it? Oh no, it's 4.2, but it's now 4.28. Not a big change, but yeah, it. 8. Oops. Thank you. See, I'm not paying attention. That's been my 2 of these, and I'll check it. 4.28. Yeah. So again, you should get the same thing if you use this formula from the text, but again, I like using the technology as long as we use it right, copy it down right.
So all you did was pretty much change it from monthly to annually, in the period to just 1 year, right?
Yeah.
And you were trying to solve for the rate.
Yeah. So it kind of gives you the same amount, get the same amount of money, but just with compounding once a year rather than monthly.
Annually, yes, that would make sense.
Yeah. So that's another way to kind of get the annual yield if it was just an annual rate. So that's the effect of the compounding. And again, there'll be some other types, but what I think this will do is get you into using the tools, and that's how you'll go through and work through the rest of the homework. And the homework's easier because you can always, I think you get 3 tries at it, and then if that doesn't work, you can ask for a similar example. Same thing, you only need to get 70%. So if there's one that's a little challenging, but so work through the ones you want. But we're going to use these 2 calculations. Simple interest, use the simple interest one. Compound interest, use the compound interest one. That's the basic thing you're going to do. And then next week when we get into loans, we'll be using primarily the compound interest calculator again, same thing, but it's just the questions will be different. We're going to be borrowing money and examining that. The cool part is, again, if you download that app to your phone, you've got something you can go into a bank and you can check their numbers. You could go to buy a car, you go to the finance department, they're telling you this, that, and the other thing. You can check their numbers and you can say, wait, you're charging me extra here. They get you to focus just on the monthly payment, and $2 or $3 padding in a monthly payment might mean they're making an extra couple $1,000s off of you. And you think, it's not a big deal. Well, no. Hey, you're charging me an extra $3 a month, but that means an extra $1,000 out of my pocket. I'm not buying this thing or that thing. So you're able to go in with knowledge, and you're able to do the math. Or your phone's able to do the math, you do the rest. So, but sound good? Okay. So again, there's that Richest Man in Babylon. If you want, you could just download the PDF and save it on your computer somewhere. Maybe read it some. It's kind of it was a good read. It's kind of interesting if you're ready for it. It's not required, but it's just sort of it's there. They do have a short part at the beginning called 7 Ways to Fatten Your Purse, and it gives you 7 things to do, kind of to, how to save money. So that's a pretty quick list to go through. And then again, just the homework. Thursday, we got work day, so come in if you'd like, work on these. If you're doing fine at home, that's fine, but I'll be here. Keep working through that. If you've got prior homework stuff you want to work on, perfect time, so we'll keep working to get everything done. Next week we do loans, and then we'll have time for a review and an exam, and we'll be good for the first half of the class.
So I'm here to ask